Joining me in the center ring is Todd Kashdan, a professor of psychology at George Mason University. Welcome, Todd, and I want to hear more about your research into bipartisanship in general and how this term curiosity plays in that study again and again.
Yes, so what we've seen by colleagues of mine and ourselves is this rise in what we call political animus, sort of great hatred for people that have disagreeing views than you in the world of politics. We wanted to find a solution. And so we looked at the work on curiosity, the desire to seek out new information, the desire to explore new perspectives, new ideas. And what we uncovered in 3 studies is that people that tend to be more curious, there's different ways of becoming curious. They tend to be less inclined to just spend time with people that share their political views. They're more likely to socialize with people that are different than them. They're more likely to consider the views of other people. They have this sense of intellectual humility and this courage to speak out against what the tides are leaning towards.
So the curious in this country, it seems like they're on the wane as a group of America. It seems like it's far more polarized than it has been in the past. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, if you look at the spectrum of ideas on a bell curve, you find that over the past 20 or so years is that the margins, the 2 extremes have become really large, very intense, very vocal. And research that's done at New York University finds that the people that express the most rage or extreme negative emotions, those are the posts that go the most viral. And so it feels like everyone has the same perspective on whatever the political issue is of the day, but it's actually a small minority of people that are making people believe that everyone's at the extreme margins.
Now, I'm curious, what prompted you to do this study?
Well, I've been studying curiosity for 25 years. And then I've also lived near DC, so I've seen the political tides change and just, mix your peanut butter with my chocolate. Just realize, hey, this might be a solution because we need simple, quick strategies that are going to get people to be less defensive, less anxious, and realize that maybe there's some wisdom and knowledge on the other side of the aisle.
When I was in my time in Congress especially, I really found that the media is so segmented now, and gone are the days of the 3 major networks, and they're all fighting for ratings, and they all were fighting to make sure they were totally non-biased. And now it seems like you can turn on any station and get a steady diet of just what you want to hear. Same with the internet. How does that contribute to this lack of curiosity?
Tremendous amount. It's all what's called motivated reasoning, is that I am seeking out information. So I'll tell people, I follow the science, I follow the evidence. But when people are motivated in their reasoning, they're only limiting particular sources that they know are going to match up with what they think. They're quickly holding very different standards for evidence that is for or against their views. And what we find, which is very exciting, is that people that tend to be more curious are more likely to say, you know what? I'm going to turn on Fox News. I'm going to turn on CNN. I'm going to turn on NBC. I'm going to listen to some random people from Sri Lanka because I want to get the whole perspective of this issue so I can make an idea and an opinion on my own.
So how do you talk to people out there and encourage them to do this? I mean, what's the incentive? Because if some people tell you, if you watch a certain news station, the sky is black, and they're going to say the sky's black even though it's white. I mean, that's just the way it is. So how do you break through that?
So let me tell you about our evidence, which is pretty exciting. So there's this thing called the black sheep effect. And I think a lot of people nod their heads who's listening, is that when someone in the in-group, your friends and allies who think the same way, is like, you know what, maybe we should pause. Maybe we're actually not answering this the right way. Maybe we're taking too extreme of a view. Those people get beaten down, ostracized, and excluded more than people on the other side. They're saying, you're a traitor. You're Benedict Arnold that happens here. And what we find is when we expose people to the fact that people are less inclined to ostracize you if you disagree with the people in your group, that makes them more inclined to say, oh, if that's the case, then I'm actually going to be a little bit braver and I'm going to be a little bit more open to considering other sources and vantage points and other people that I'm going to include in my social circle because I don't know everything and I'm around smart people.
So that appears to be a dangerous ground, though, isn't it? Because we've heard stories again and again, I have at least, in fact, it happened to me. people who had disagreed with my politics once I got in office were lifelong friends, and they no longer talk to me because I happen to be Republican, not a Democrat, and vice versa. It's how do you break through that?
Right. So that's the black sheep effect, and it's real.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we know from 40 years of science is the best way to actually break down the divides between blues and reds, particularly in the United States, is to get people to engage in activities that have nothing to do with the political domain. And in Northern Virginia, where I live, there used to be, or at least still is, these great softball games that happen where you get, Republican and Democratic senators and congressmen and women who are playing a sport. And when they're in between innings, when they're walking back to their cars, that's when real conversations and real friendships take place. And the whole goal is, can you create a friendship outside of politics so it can serve as a sort of force field to protect yourself if you disagree with them within the political realm?
It's funny you say that because I just thought back every morning when I was in Congress, I'd go to the gym about 7 a.m. and there was a bunch of Democrats, a bunch of Republicans, the entire spectrum was there. And there was the one time where they're not like sniping at each other. And actually you got more work done in the gym while you're working out, chatting with the person next to you than you did any other time. So I think you're right about that,
Yeah.
So let me ask you this much. What is wagging the dog more with respect to partisanship? Is it partisan political leaders, or is it partisan political leaders doing what they have to do to get reelected by saying the things they're saying, even if they don't believe it?
So, as a scientist, I like to be precise. I think we're seeing a greater level of over-identifying with our political affiliation, as that is the core element of our personality, our character, and our sense of who we are. And the more that we do that, the harder it is to actually look into the backpack with what this identity is and say, there's some things wrong with it. I agree with 83% of my party, but that other 17%, not only do I disagree, but I want to say something. So I really think what's wagging the tail is really this hyper identification. And I hope everyone listening just reduces the impact of what that political view is, as this is you, as opposed to this is one of many things I believe in.
So Todd, tell us, what is the impact of social media on this whole dynamic?
What you find is that the 10% at the absolute extremes of political views, so left and right, just for right now, we'll call it that, those get amplified more than anything else that's happening there, especially in the middle. And so it feels as if everyone is holding the same view, really extreme, like absolute yes, hell freaking no views that happens there. Whereas the vast majority, the silent majority in the middle, are like, sometimes, it depends.
Todd, talk about being in your tribe, your circle of friends, and you all have similar political views, if you will. I go through this with a lot of my high school friends on our little chat boxing, right? And we have different views, and sometimes you just step back when you go into a different area. But how do you give some advice to people if you're trying to wade into a subject matter that as people in your tribe may be disagreeing with you on?
I'm so glad you asked this question. Let me give you two really concrete bits of advice right off the bat. One, how is your greatest question you can ask, but the inflection in your voice is absolutely essential, where you're truly showing interest and non-defensiveness. So you would say, I hear what you're saying. It's not how I typically think about it. How would that work? And so you can see in my voice, which is I really care about what you're going to say. I'm not going to challenge it immediately. I'm going to sit and listen to it. And what typically happens is people have these strong views, but don't understand the mechanics of it and might not even know the terms. And so it gets a little bit playful as you realize, I don't even know what fracking means. I don't even know what DEI stands for. I'm not even sure what Marxism is and how it's different from communism. And you want to get there where you can kind of just smirk a little bit and have some humanity. Yeah, that's part one.
That's interesting you say that, because a lot of times I think when I say something to my friends or my friends say something to me, we have disagreeing views, our tone of voice changes, or the way we type it out on a text changes, and it gets more aggressive. So you're saying take a non-aggressive stance and that helps diffuse it and maybe generate a conversation?
And really lean on that how question. The second part, and this is even more important, this relates to all emotionally charged conversations. I call it the discomfort caveat. You can start conversations by saying, I love our relationship. I was not going to say anything, And I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable about revealing this, but just because we're talking about it, bear with me for a second because I might not get the words right. When you have this opening before whatever it is you're going to say, people's defenses come down, they get less anxious, and they become more intrigued of what's so exciting, what's so powerful that you're anxious about in the first place. Of course, you're my friend, whatever you want to say. So instead of just jumping into the topic, open up with how hard it is for you to open your mouth in the first place. And you're going to have basically this fair hearing to whatever view you have.
You know, I look back to the great leaders in our country's history as a student of presidents of the past, and I look at Lincoln, and I look at FDR, and I look at JFK, and I look at Reagan, and even Bill Clinton, his personal shortcomings aside. They all had this common thing, and this common thing was the ability to lead and lead for all Americans. How much of an impact would it be to get someone like that back in the White House again on this whole narrative?
I think what happens is you've now had about 4 cycles of real extremism from one side to the other side. And normally what takes place is the pendulum basically swings too far, and so you have an overcorrection afterwards. If you have multiple overcorrections, I think you just might get to a point where people say, I just want the smartest, most rational person who actually thinks about keeping my family safe, keeping some money in my wallet, my bank account, and making sure that the people that actually deserve to get good jobs get good jobs.
Todd Kashdan from George Mason University, thank you so much.